courage rarely arrives as a roar. More often, it appears as a quiet moment when a man realizes he has been stepping back from the same threshold for years. The bar at the threshold is a story about that moment, about fear, about hesitation, and about the step that changes a life. Eric Wolfborn first felt fear the way a man feels winter before it arrives. Not as a gust, not as a shout, but as a change in the air that made the hair on his forearms lift. The morning had been clear enough to see the ridge line of the eastern hills, and the river below the pine forest had shone like hammered silver. Yet something in the stillness did not belong to spring. He paused at the edge of the trees and listened. The forest held its breath. In the village behind him, men would say later that Eric had the look of one who heard the world speaking. That was not true. He heard what every man heard. The difference was that he did not rush to drown it out. A raven clicked its beak from a branch overhead, then hopped sideways as if making room for a thought. Eric rested his palm against the bark of a pine. The tree was cold and steady, and the steadiness traveled into his hand. Fear walked with every living man. Eric had learned that early, at 12, when his father put him on the edge of a frozen lake and pointed to a patch of black ice.
"Cross,"
his father had said,
"or stand there until the sun is gone."
Eric had stood. The air had bitten his throat. His father had not moved to help him. The day had ended. They had walked home in silence. His father had not struck him. That would have been easier. Instead, he had said, as if speaking of a tool that needed sharpening,
"You will remember this cold later. You will remember that you chose it."
That was how fear began to teach Eric. It never arrived as a beast leaping from the dark. It arrived like a quiet counsel. Delay, wait, be certain. He had waited too often since then. Now he had come to the forest for a reason he did not admit aloud. The village had become too small for his mind. Too many glances, too many men who had never left the valley, but spoke as if they knew the world. He had gone north once, beyond the marshes, and returned with a scar on his shoulder and a story he did not tell. When he spoke of going again, the elders nodded as if wise, and the young men laughed as if brave, but none of them stepped up to follow. So Eric went alone. He carried a short spear and a sayax knife at his belt. His cloak was rough wool, patched at the shoulder. He wore a wolf tooth on a thong under his shirt, a token given by a skald years ago who had said, half joking and half serious,
"Wolves do not ask permission to be wolves."
Wolfborn. The name had stuck. Some said it as praise, some said it as warning. Eric had never decided which he preferred. He took a step into the trees. The forest swallowed the light in slow layers. Pine needles softened his footfalls, and the damp earth smelled of old rain and hidden mushrooms. The raven followed overhead, silent now, as if it too waited to see what he would do. He had not gone far when he found the first sign. A strip of cloth hung from a broken branch at shoulder height, snagged as if someone had run through in haste. The cloth was once dyed red, but the color had faded to rust. Eric lifted it and felt the stiffness of dried blood. The villagers had spoken of a trader who had passed through a week ago, a man with a cart and 2 shaggy ponies. He had bought dried fish, sold a little salt, and talked too much about the road north. Then he had left at dawn. No one had seen him since. Eric had told himself he was walking to clear his head. That was the lie that made it easier to leave. He dropped the cloth and moved on. A mile deep found the wheel ruts. Then the cart itself tipped on its side in a shallow ditch. One pony lay dead nearby, its belly torn open. The other was gone. The cart's contents had been scattered. A sack of grain split on stones, a broken barrel, a small iron pot cracked at the rim. Eric crouched by the pony's body. The bite marks were too large for a fox, too ragged for a dog. Wolf, the thought should have been simple. Wolves took what they could. Winter had been hard. Packs grew bold when hunger grew long. But something about the scene felt staged, as if the violence had been arranged. He looked for tracks, There were wolf prints in the mud, yes, but also human footprints. Men wearing boots with squared heels. More than one. Heavy steps that did not circle, as hunters did. They came straight in, like men who knew where to stand. Eric straightened and scanned the trees. Fear spoke softly again. Leave. You have seen enough. Go back. Tell the elders. Let them gather men. It was a tempting voice. It sounded sensible. It sounded like prudence. Eric almost obeyed it. He stood in the hush of the pines and felt the old pattern rise in him, as familiar as the weight of his cloak. See danger, step back, call it wisdom. Small refusals shaped a man's posture. He could feel it in his shoulders, the habit of withdrawing. He had been praised in his village for being calm, for being careful, for not rushing into trouble like a fool. Yet sometimes when he watched the older men speak loudly about honor and strength while avoiding the hard work of living, he wondered if his calm was simply a softer kind of cowardice. He thought of the trader, alone on the road. He thought of the cloth on the branch. He thought of the cart tipped like a broken thought in a ditch. He looked down at his hands. They were steady. They were capable. He had used them to build, to hunt, to fight, but he had also used them to hold himself back. There came a threshold that would not move until a hand lifted the bar. He lifted his spear and stepped past the cart. The path narrowed. The trees grew thicker. The forest floor rose and fell in low ridges where roots knotted like old rope. Eric moved slowly, letting the quiet teach him. He followed the tracks where they were clear. When they vanished on stone, he read the broken moss, the snapped twigs, the disturbed leaf litter. Once he heard a distant howl, long and low, and felt his chest tighten. It was not fear of death, not exactly. It was fear of being outmatched, of being foolish, of being alone in a place that did not care if he was brave. Courage was not calm. It moved while fear remained. He remembered that, and it helped. At midday, he reached a rocky ravine where the ground dropped suddenly into a narrow cut. A small stream ran at the bottom, black between stones. On the far side, the slope rose steeply and was littered with fallen branches. It was the kind of place men avoided, not because it was dangerous, but because it made them feel watched. Eric climbed down carefully, boots slipping on wet rock. Halfway across the stream, he saw a raven feather pinned to a stone with a thorn. The feather was glossy black, too neat, too deliberate. He looked up. 3 ravens sat in a row on a dead branch above the ravine, their heads cocked, as if listening to something he could not hear. Ravens were not wolves. Ravens were not men. Yet in the old stories, ravens followed blood, and blood followed men who called themselves kings. Eric felt a prickling at the base of his skull. On the far side, he climbed and found more footprints. 2 sets, no 3. One of them dragged slightly, as if someone had been pulled. And there were wolf tracks again, fresh now, pressed sharply into the damp earth. Not one wolf. Several. Eric adjusted his grip on the spear. He moved forward, and the wind rose. It hissed through the pine needles like whispered counsel. Doubt returned louder. What are you doing? Who do you think you are? A lone man, with a spear, against a pack, against men who set traps. He paused behind a tree and waited, listening. A sound came to him through the branches. Not a howl, a voice, a man's groan. Eric's heart hammered once, hard enough to make him taste metal. He tightened his jaw and moved toward the sound. He found the trader in a small clearing, tied to a sapling with rope around his wrists. The man's face was swollen, one eye was closed, purple and thick. His mouth hung open as he breathed. His tunic was torn. Blood had dried in a smear down his neck. When the trader saw Eric, he tried to speak, but only a hoarse rasp came out. Eric knelt, knife already in his hand, to cut the rope. Then the clearing shifted. Not the trees, not the light. Something moved at the edge of his vision, too slow to be a falling branch. A wolf stepped into view from behind a stump. It was larger than any wolf Eric had seen. Its coat was mottled gray and black, its shoulders high, its eyes pale as ice. It did not snarl, it did not charge. It stood as if it owned the clearing. Another wolf appeared to its left. Then another. 3, 4. Eric rose slowly, putting himself between the wolves and the traitor. His spear point lifted. The wolves watched him with a quiet that was worse than noise. From the shadows behind them, a man's laugh came, dry and amused.
You're far from your little hall, Wolfborn.
Eric's gaze flicked toward the voice. 2 men stepped out from behind the trees. They wore leather and furs, not the patched clothes of hunters, but the heavier gear of men who traveled. One had a short axe on his belt. The other carried a bow. They were not bandits in the desperate sense. They were too calm, too sure. A third man emerged behind them, older, with hair braided tight and a scar crossing his nose. He held a staff of ash wood, and on the staff's top was carved a raven's head. Eric felt the air tightened again. He had heard of men like these, not in his village, but on the road north, men who called themselves keepers of old ways, men who used animals as signs and threats, men who spoke of Odin as if they drank with him. The older man smiled.
You found our lost traitor,
he said.
That was not meant for you.
Eric kept his spear steady.
Let him go.
The older man's smile widened slightly, as if Eric had said something entertaining.
And if we do not?
Eric's mouth went dry. This has been The Bar at the Threshold, Part 1, from The Seer of Odin, written by Owen Clouston. Part 2 continues the story.